Hello, this is wmpyr. I'm here to talk about the Mr. Pedro video clips that I finished uploading for you guys. And before I get into each video, let me talk about something that has been, I don't want to say bothering me, but I think this is a very, very important issue to discuss that could help other martial artists as well. And yeah, this is something that is of a big concern for me, okay? And the thing is, if you watch those video clips, you know that I think it's very obvious that we are sparring, but it's light contact. It's very light contact, and it's super controlled. So I'm taking care of him. He's also taking care of me. We're taking care of each other. We're not there to beat each other up, right? And that's where the issue is, okay? Because in martial arts, there's a lot of benefits for martial arts, right? History, philosophy, health, culture. There's all kinds of things that you could benefit from and learn from martial arts. And one of them, the one that's always emphasized the most, is can you do this stuff in a real life situation? Can you actually protect yourself and protect loved ones if things were to happen for real? So, of course, we're all looking for the practical and effective side, and unfortunately, that kind of gets more emphasized than everything else. But that is definitely a huge part for martial arts, and I'm, of course, interested in that, and so is Mr. Pedro, without a doubt, okay? So we want that. And if you think about it, how can you be able to do that for real? Like all the skills that you practice, all those techniques, how can you be sure that you could use that in a real life situation? And the swimmer example is a perfect example, right? You could be technical and detail and break it down, the strokes for swimming and go into, meticulous analysis. But if you don't jump in the water, you ain't gonna swim, period. That's all like just theorizing and whatever. At the end of the day, you need to get in the water kind of thing. So we could say the same thing about martial arts. And in martial arts, how do we do that? We do it through pretty much full contact sparring. So whether it's with weapons or without weapons, with protective gear or without protective gear, you do full contact sparring, period. That's how we do it in martial arts, because the only other thing is to go do it for real. So you'd have to be a soldier that's going to war and go experience that as much as you can, or get into street fights or be a police officer and get into a lot of altercations. Look, or a bouncer, you have to go do it for real. And that is super dangerous, obviously. So, martial arts wise, we do it in a very controlled environment and we do full contact sparring. What Mr. Pedro and I did is not full contact sparring. And for me, quite frankly, I don't do that anymore. I'm not interested in that anymore because I've already done it and I'm nice and old now that I don't need to risk my health like that anymore. Now, if I did it, would I become better? Would I become better at fighting? My self-defense skills, all that, would it increase? Yes, for sure. Without a doubt. I believe so. It would become better, but it also increases my chance of injuries, all kinds of injuries. And do I think it's worth it? No, I don't think it's worth it at all. So I don't do it anymore. Period. It's that simple. Okay. And so the question is, If you don't do it, if you don't do full contact sparring, then can your stuff still be effective and realistic for real life situation? And I believe the answer is 100% yes, because we're talking about martial arts. Art means you become creative. Be creative to figure out how you could get those skills without actually doing it, without actually getting into real fights or without actually going full contact. Be creative. Now, I don't think it's possible to learn how to be effective and practical in a real life situation without having experienced full contact. So at some point in your life, you need to go through it. I've already done it. When I was younger, I experienced various forms of full contact sparring, challenge matches, even competition. I went through that, okay? And now at this age, I feel like I still remember it. Am I rusty? Without a doubt, for sure, okay? Am I as sharp as I was when I was doing that stuff? Of course not, okay? But the important thing is I remember what that was like, and I've been through it many times. So I've been through it. That's the important part. So at this point, it's like, how many do you need to do? Do you need to do 1,000,000 fights? Do you need to do 1,000 fights? I think that the number depends on the person, but I really don't think you need to do it for like 10, 20 years of your life, which I believe will just shorten it. So I've already done it, been there, done that. Now I think it's time where I really need to be creative and try to make the training as realistic as possible without doing full contact. And to me, that is the goal. So was I able to do that with Mr. Pedro? I believe we both tried to do it. We tried really hard to do that without just fighting each other. Can we still make this training, this light controlled sparring, can we make it as realistic as we can? And he was on the same page as me, and I believe we tried. Of course, it's not something I'm used to, okay? In fact, it's easier for me to say, let's just go full contact. That's a lot easier, honestly. And I believe a lot of people, they just do that instead because it's easier, because it feels more natural, and they go, let's just, dude, forget this. Let's just really do it. They get frustrated and, excuse me, and they just want to go full contact. The more immature you are, the more likely you are going to do that. So you could see it in like people go to the backyard and they just throw down, right? And really, training-wise, that's a dumb way to train. That really, your learning curve for the amount of all this injury risk and all the force being applied and everything, the learning curve can be not that high. Because you ask the person what happened. And a lot of times, because of the adrenaline dump and stuff, they'll tell you, I don't know what happened. He hit me and I just fought back with everything I had. And so how can you learn like that? You don't even know what happened. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is we tried our best to make the light sparring realistic without going full contact, but at the same time, I'm not used to that, and he's not used to that. So, I mean, he has combat sports experience, various, and competition. So he understands that, and I'm not saying this as an excuse, but what he and I brought to the table that day and what you guys are seeing on film, That's not that's not my best, and that's not his best. In fact, it's kind of our worst probably. If you think that's how I fight, and if you did fight me, you're in for a surprise. When I look back on the footage, I'm taking care of him too much in ways that doesn't need to be. I'm holding out my legs. It's very easy for him to catch. There's a lot of things that are off. And strategically, I wasn't even doing the right strategies. In real life, I would be trying to outsmart him. I would be trying to set him up. I would be trying to trick him. I didn't do any of that. So I was kind of like, okay, let's play the dumb textbook Thai boxer, and let me just use what is expected of me kind of thing. I was closer to that. So, and that is a lot of the problems that people see in traditional martial arts where, like, for example, in Aikido, and I don't mean to pick on Aikido because they get picked on so much. I tremendously respect Aikido, and I think it's awesome, and I still practice it to this day. There are some techniques and exercises that I do that I think are extremely valuable. But anyway, so in Aikido, you have, and these are the Aikido instructor's fault. I would say it flat out because I remember seeing people like this. But they would go, okay, throw me a punch. So the guy, throws a punch at the Aikido guy, and then the Aikido guy counters it, and then it's just standard practice, standard technique training, right? But the Aikido people start getting used to this kind of very sloppy punches. And then they start going, yeah, I can defend a punch for real. And any boxer that watches that goes, that's not a real punch. Because the quality of that punch is very low. But you got to understand, the Aikido people are doing that because the punch is not the main point at that time. At that time, the students' levels are so low, they're trying to learn the technique. So if the punch's quality is too high, they're not going to be able to do the technique. So the first thing that they're working on is just memorizing and being able to practice the technique and get some reps before you start upping the quality of the punch. But then you get these confused Aikido instructors where they never up the level of the punch, and they think now that they can defend the punch because their technique, the Aikido technique, has improved significantly. So they think they're ready for a real punch, but they've never upped the level of the punch. So, it's not, you have to understand what they're trying to do in the training. So the way that they're training in the beginning, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you start thinking, I'm ready for a real punch, but you haven't done that kind of training. So that's the problem. It's not the way the Aikido guys train. It's more the mentality is the problem, where they're getting the wrong idea, right? So in this case with Mr. Pedro, like I said, this is the second time I meet him in person. So in some ways we didn't know what to expect of each other. I didn't know if it was going to turn into a fight or what, but I had an idea that he's a humble guy, that he's very technical, and he's a nice guy and controlled, and he's not immature, and he doesn't have like anger problems or something like that. So I knew that it was going to be a good session, or I had a feeling. If not, I wouldn't have invited him over in the first place. But exactly, we took care of each other too much to the point that we are not fighting realistically. Not realistically for me, that's not the way I would really fight, and that's not the way he would really fight. So unfortunately, I don't want to lie to you guys, but what you're seeing is a very watered down version of us. And we tried, okay? We're just not used to it. So if we do this multiple times, we might get better at it, where you're going to start seeing more techniques from me and him, of course, that's going to look a lot more like what we would use for real. That being said, there are techniques and stuff in there that were along the lines of more realistic. We tried, like I said, we really tried. We're just not good at it because we're not used to this kind of sparring. Okay, and that takes all kinds of practice. But the interesting thing about that is, once again, if we get good at this, I definitely 100% believe there is a way to train without going full contact, yet we are still actually training realistically, and we are actually training to help us. This stuff would actually help us a lot in a real life situation. So that's the interesting thing is, now can you get to that level? Can you find that? And I believe 100%. And, you know, a lot of people give up on it. They give up on that. They don't think it exists. And that's why in MMA MMA gyms, a lot of times they throw that out the window and they just full contact spar all the time. And they get injured, and, you know, they show up in fights messed up. They're never 100% in the actual fights where they're getting paid and everything, but they're having these mega gym wars, you know, behind the scenes. And yeah, and somewhere inside they know this is not the smartest way to train, but they don't know. So you see that problem occurring. So anyway, let me go in real quick. I know this took up way more than I wanted to say, but it was just something that I needed to get out. All right. Okay. So with Mr. Pedro, the first video that I uploaded was the double sticks versus double sticks. I had a tremendous amount of fun here. I mean, think about it, man. We're two guys. We didn't have any protective gear on. I did have a cup on, but we didn't have any protective gear really, and we are going with two sticks. I mean, we could easily have messed each other up big time. Double sticks is very complex, very complex, just because you're dealing with, you got to handle two sticks and you got to deal with their two sticks coming in, you know, so it makes it extremely complex in that sense. Single stick, it kind of allows you to focus more on that single stick, but that makes it very deep and complex. So it's a different type of complexity. It's like comparing boxing with kickboxing. With boxing, it's just the hands, but then you get to go real deep, very technical into that. So the hand skills go off the chart. With kickboxing, you got to divide that with hands and legs, and now it's a lot more to deal with. So in that sense, it's complex, but it's not like you're zeroing in on just the hands. You know what I mean? So double sticks in that sense is very complex because you got to deal with a lot. And here, I was trying different things without going into, like I said, strategically trying to defeat Mr. Pedro's techniques. Wasn't able to do that, but I did. You know, we started off with the Heaven Six, and then from there you break off, and then you're supposed to meet back, and you break off and meet back, and that kind of like tests your Heaven Six timing. And I was like, I knew that's what he was expecting, because we do, you know, if you do FMA, that's normal. But I was like, dude, we're kind of beyond that, all right? I know you can do that. I know I've experienced that. I know you've experienced that. Let's go further. So then I was like, let's go more chaos. And maybe I did it too quickly, but then we started like free-flowing, and then I started to make it a little bit more competitive. And I mean, he caught on right away, and he was matching me. And so I started going for his hands. I started using a little bit of like more fencing type of footwork to go in with the lunges and stuff like that, because for me in long range, it would look more like fencing. You don't see me really do any fakes. Although I do go from high to low, and he does that to me. He did a really good job going to low line strikes that I had to deal with, and it was just a great experience. Trying to defang the snake, but then he's doing that to me too. So to get that, because in a street situation, when you defang the snake, unless you defang the snake and it's done, that's textbook, that would be great. But if he's not done, guess what? He's going to do that right back to you, even if he's not trained in it. So if I'm dealing with someone like Mr. Pedro trying to defang the snake on me, then that's awesome, because I'm trying to deal with someone who's a lot more skilled and a lot more accurate and stuff, trying to go for my arms, and I gotta watch out for that. And if I'm used to that, then some dude on the street who's just trying to copy me, what I did to him, is going to be easier. So, there's a lot of benefits there. He did some angles of attack that I was not used to, so that was also great. And the angles of attack, man, once you're like focused on, okay, he's going to stab me in the stomach again and again. Okay, so you're defending that, and all of a sudden he changes it to a different angle. It's like, damn. So the angles of attack, even though I know it like the back of my hand, it's so good. It's basic, but that is awesome, guys. That's all I got to tell you. The next thing right here is we now went into kickboxing. Put on the gloves, and I said, let's go light kickboxing. And this is where I totally messed up. And I apologize to Mr. Pedro, and I feel bad about it. And it makes me look bad, really bad, that I did the illegal blow, and it was a 100% pure accident. But the whole thing was kind of throwing me off about we are light sparring. It's not full contact, but in my mind, it felt like this is so far from reality that it was kind of messing me up at the same time. That's not an excuse, but I'm just saying, okay? And same for him too. I'm sure of it. I'm 100% sure. But there were things that were very realistic too. Like, for example, when we clinched, he was already throwing me. The moment we clinched, his body's already getting into, it was automatic for the guy. And I felt that. I was like, wow. I mean, it gave me no chance. I mean, no time to defend, because it's that quick. The boom, and it settled. No, it's boom, already a throw coming, So that was awesome to experience and feel for me, to get that practice. And then when I was using the Muay Thai on him, I wanted to do some high kicks. Something I've been working more and more recently on my own was the Muay Thai high kicks, but I was afraid. I didn't know if it was going to be able to... first, I didn't really see an opening from him. And then number two, I didn't know how well I was going to be able to control it. So I was worried about that. Now, the other thing I like to do is of course, the low kick is the proper format for Muay Thai kickboxing. You do the low kick over and over, and you take them down. And that was, of course, one of my specialties, just because my shins have been conditioned way back in the day quite a bit. So, and that's why I wore the shin pads, and I asked him to wear shin pads, because I didn't want to hurt him. But who knows? His shins might be super conditioned too. I don't know. But I just didn't want to take that risk. But so if the low kick is my main thing, I like to distract my opponent with high kicks. Kicks that are not even known to be used in Muay Thai, or not normally. So that's where the axe kick came in, which he completely defended perfectly. And then the spinning back kicks, spinning spin kicks and stuff like that. Those are the kinds of techniques I use to throw my opponent off. And so that was a little bit of realistic tactic. So there's bits and elements that we're trying to throw in there to make it a little bit more realistic. But yeah, overall, like I said, I know I could do way better. And I know Mr. Pedro, even though I haven't seen his full contact, I know he could do way better. And I'm not just saying that because, it's full contact. Now I could go 100%. No, I mean, even technically, strategically, there's techniques that he and I know didn't employ because our mind is so busy taking care of each other, making sure we don't get hurt. So that is what really threw me off, and I'm sure him too. And the next one, we went into disarms. The disarm video is, man, this is always tremendous fun for me. But this is the one out of the, 4 video clips, the least like sparring. This is because we're focused on, we know we're supposed to be working on the disarms, so we kind of at some point feed the guy and let them disarm. And hopefully in the future, it'll be less of that. It'll be more and more closer to sparring, but so the knife attacks are going to be more realistic looking. He caught me with some great stuff where I was like, okay, he's just going to feed me the arm. And no, he didn't. So that's the kind of stuff we need. That's the good stuff, where it's not just, here's my arm, go ahead, do the disarm. It's not like that. And so but once again, we tried. We really tried. So on the disarm, you see, I don't just immediately drop the knife. I don't just, and the same with Mr. Kevin. I didn't just immediately let go of the knife. I wasn't resisting, so to speak, with Mr. Kevin. And also with Mr. Pedro, it's not like I wasn't super resisting, but I wasn't just giving it to him either. So that is very important to make your training a little bit more realistic. And you got to just add a whole bunch of elements, a little bit more realistic, a little bit more realistic, a little bit more, a little bit more. So step by step by step, you have to have the patience. You have to grow it, okay? And even though I feel a little frustrated with what we filmed, I believe we're on the right track, okay? So this is where a lot of people lose patience and they just give up. And for the disarms, real quick, I was able to implement some of the wrenching. Of course, not fully because I don't want to hurt them, but I was able to go into the wrenching, and that is my staple. This is like, if you see wrenching used for disarming, then you know that's from me. That's the wmpyr method. Okay, that's huge for me. So that's kind of almost a trademark kind of thing. And to see Mr. Pedro wasn't doing that. He was doing different moves. And you'll see a kote gaeshi that he did to me, which is awesome. I was like, man, that is so cool. He did a kote gaeshi. He did the moves where he's using my own hand, because I'm holding the knife, and make me stab myself. That is typical FMA technique, textbook technique, and that's kind of the stuff that I wanted to see from him. So I got to see some traditional moves. I didn't tell him, you got to do this, you got to do that. No, I said I wanted to see what he was going to do. And to see him do that kind of stuff was great. It was just awesome to see. It is different from mine, and even though we're both FMA, I had a lot of fun, and I'll be looking back on that as well. So the last video is right here, open hand. So he wanted to go into open hand. This was his suggestion, and I said, sure, let's do it. We did. And so now with open hand, you got eye jabs, you got palm strikes, palm slaps, and it really, the transition of going into a strike to a grab is so much easier. And plus, instead of the gloves, the hand is smaller, obviously, so it slips through so much easier. And that was also an excellent experience. So anyway, that's it for now. Thank you for viewing, and take care, folks.